Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Diatoms, which is a 1 to 4 player kind of abstract puzzly board game that takes around 40 minutes to play. This one is a prototype version of the game. It has been successfully funded on Kickstarter, and because this prototype was provided to me, I'm assuming it's going to come out at retail sooner or later. But before I get started on my review of Diatoms, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so Diatoms is going to look somewhat like this when it is set up. So each player is going to have their own player board that looks like this, where you will be, throughout the process of the game, slotting in these different diatoms that come in 5 different shapes. You've got the circle ones all the way up to the star ones, like so. Now you can see that this board is kind of broken down into different areas. You've got essentially 3 different rings here. You've got the outer ring, the middle ring, and the inner ring. And you've also got these lines that go vertically, diagonally in both directions, as well as horizontally, which is very relevant when it comes to the scoring objectives that you are trying to aim towards. Now, the game also comes with a bunch of these tiles. There's going to be a kind of a communal display of tiles where the starting one is going to go here, then you're going to be building around it by matching colours. And this method here, through placing these tiles, is how you acquire the diatoms to put onto your player board. Each player is going to have their own little reference sheet which shows you how to get each different shape of diatom, as well as a personal judging sheet which is where you will record your final scoring. Now, at all times, each player will have 2 of these tiles in their hand, and at the start of their turn, you will draw a tile from one of these 2 stacks. And depending on the player count, these stacks will be bigger or smaller, just to make sure that the game is ticking along at a good pace. And on your turn, once you've drawn your tile, you will place one of the tiles into that communal bunch of tiles in the center there. So let's just say, for example, I wanted to place this one in here, bearing in mind that you have to match colour to colour. So you can see here, this is perfectly fine because I've matched the yellow to the yellow and the red to red. You can see that some of the areas are kind of blank, which just means you can match anything to it. So I could actually do that, even though it's not a colour match. Now, as soon as you have this kind of triarchy of shapes here and create a circle, what you're going to do is you're going to put this little marker on here to show which diatoms you will collect. Now you're going to look at this like a pizza basically and have a look at the different segments. So you can see here that I have 4 of these yellow segments, as if I was breaking this up into 6 pieces, and 2 of the red segments. And referring to my player sheet like so, you can see that when I create a group of 4 like this, I'm going to get a square. So therefore I'd get a yellow square, because I get 4 yellow pieces. That means a yellow square. I've got 2 of the red pieces. The 2 relates to this kind of little oval shape. Therefore, I will get a red oval, again, matching colour to colour. Now, breaking this down further, you can see that if you've got 1 segment, it's going to be a circle, 2 segments is the oval, 3 segments is the triangle, 4 segments is the square, and 5 segments is the star. Now, if you get all 6 segments of one particular colour, you can break it up into different categories, basically. So you can take 2 of the diatoms as long as the total value goes up to 6. So you can take a 5 and a 1, a 2 and a 4, or a 3 and a 3. And once you've placed your tile and potentially got some diatoms, then you are going to be placing these on your player sheet, trying to get as many points as you can, or with the aim of getting as many points as you can. So without thinking, let's just say I'll put these here and here. And you can see on this player board that every single slot can take 2 different types of diatoms. And because of the kind of spatial fit here, you cannot physically fit another shape in there. So it's quite nice that it actually fits quite snugly. Like you can see here that this spot has a square and an oval. This is a star and a triangle. But of course, if you're having one, you cannot have the other. So what are we actually trying to achieve here? So there's always going to be 3 kind of regular objectives that you're trying to aim towards. The first one here is the matching colours, where you're trying to get as much as a certain type of colour as you possibly can. if you get 3 or more of the same color, you get 5 points, 5 or more, 20 points, 8 or more, 40 points. So a very simple scoring category there. The second one is going to be the symmetrical pairs on lines, which is probably the most advanced one, where you want to be getting the exact shape, the exact color, or preferably both, on your player sheet here. So let's just say, for example, I ended up placing an oval here. This will be a great placement because it is on the same line and it is mirrored. So this would actually get me 15 points. Now, if I manage to get, say, the same shape but not the same color, or the same color and not the same shape, then you'd get 5 points. So in this example, because they're both squares, I would get 5 points, even though they're not a perfect color match. And the final category is a bit more simple, again, where you are simply trying to get the different shapes on the different rings of your player board. So if you have, say, 5 of the different shapes on the outer ring, you'd get a massive 40 points. If you only get 4, you get 20 points. And if you only get 2, you'd get a meager 5 points. Now, there are also some guest judges that you can choose to use. Now, I would suggest using them each game, and these come in 2 different modes. You've got like the easy mode, or you have the persnickety mode, which makes it particularly difficult to get points, or at least it gives you an option to get points, but it will come with potential negatives or a downside to that. So, for example, in this one, the Edge Enthusiast is going to give me 5 points for each diatom on my outer rim or outer ring, which may give me another incentive to get points. But on the persnickety mode, if I have the most diatoms on my outer ring, I'll get a massive 100 points. But every time I have a diatom on the outer rim connected to one of the same color, I'm going to lose 5 points. So again, you can see that there's a potential massive upside there, but you've got to be quite careful because those points are going to quickly get chipped away if I keep on breaking that restriction. And the game does come with a ton of these guest judges for variability, so you're always going to have a very different game each time you play. And that is essentially how the game works. You're going to keep on playing until each player has run out of tiles. You're going to calculate all the points on your board based on those scoring categories from those judges and guest judges. The sheet here does a really good job of breaking down all the different scoring categories, the matching colours, the symmetrical pairs, as well as the different shapes. And of course, if you want to use a guest judge, you can use that. You're going to calculate all your subtotals, create a grand total, and of course the player with the most victory points will be the winner. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on Diatoms. I want to start off with how distinct this game feels. It does have a unique identity. I can't really think of anything else quite like this one. Now, the game is essentially a hybrid. It's like a tile placement game, a relatively simple one, matched with a kind of a little restrictive puzzle here, of course, trying to get as many points as you can, abiding by those scoring categories. But within that kind of simple hybrid mechanisms, or hybrid of mechanisms, you do have a distinct feature here, and that is this kind of fraction mechanism. I really like this. And you can kind of utilize this to your own benefit. Do you want to try and work towards all of one color and break that shape down, or break that color down into different shapes? Do you want very particular shapes, particular colors? And of course, that all comes down to the available pool here. So there's a good amount of interaction here where the shapes in the center are constantly changing. And of course, you are trying to manage your small, so therefore manageable hand of tiles to try to get not only as many of diatoms as you can, but also the very particular diatoms you need for your player sheet to get as many points as you can. But I do like how satisfying it feels when you get that perfect or optimal place on the board here. And something I didn't mention is that if you do manage to pull off a great maneuver, now I'm not sure if I can do one here, but let's just say if I manage to do something like this, which I think is okay, you will calculate several of the diatoms at once. So you'd not only do this ring here, but you'd also do this ring over here as well, because again I've completed 2 kind of trifectas of tiles. So sometimes you can get completely flooded with diatoms and therefore just kind of mix and match your little puzzle as much as you can. And it has that good kind of a mechanism that I tend to like or that feeling in these puzzly games of almost managing your ambition. It kind of reminds me of a game like Calico, where sometimes you might maybe be a bit too optimistic about what you can achieve because you're trying to get the exact right tiles in the exact right places. But because this game works at a pretty fast pace, you will find yourself running out of options or running out of time to pull off the ideal placement, and you might just have to kind of deal or settle with what you can get. Maybe you're not getting the perfect matches, but matching shapes and not the colors, or colors and not the shapes. So, do you want to bite off more than you can chew and maybe pull off a great feat of strength, or do you want to just kind of bank yourself some points? So I really do like that. And again, it's all about managing your ambition and how much you can pull off. And kind of touching on what I've already mentioned, I think this game does a fantastic job of weighing up the kind of stuffiness of an abstract style game with the breeziness of a family weight game. And because you are restricted to only a couple of tiles in your hand, you aren't paralyzed with options, and sometimes it can be more than viable just to get even if you're not particularly thinking about which colors you're getting, just trying to match as best as you can with the tile layout, and getting a bunch of items and trying to fit them best onto your sheet, without paying too much attention about which particular shapes you want. So I think you can definitely play this game or approach this game in many ways. Do you want to be very particular about what you want, or do you want to just place a tile and match a few colors, get flooded with items, and hopefully work with what you've got? So again, it really does strike that nice balance between being almost a pure abstract game with that breeziness of a family game. The player engagement of this game is fantastic. There's very little downtime because once your opponent has placed their tile, they can kind of work out their little puzzle items as they like as you continue with your turn. So again, you're not really waiting on your opponent to place things because that's not really your concern. But at the same time, there is still a good amount of player interaction because, again, that communal tile layout was always changing. Opportunities are always arising and going. So you need to consider that. You've also got, your head down in a little puzzle, and it's quite satisfying when you pull off these really impressive looking mosaics. And something I really want to mention is how perfect the game length is here. Depending on the player count, you are going to have quite, a few or not many tiles if you are only playing with, say, 2 players. And it really does feel like a brisk and punchy game. Not once when I played this game have I felt for a second that it's outstayed its welcome. It is really sharp. And again, it does not drag its heels one bit. So you get quite a lot of game here for a very short or small time investment. I think the replayability is solid because, again, you're always reacting to the layout of the tile state here, so it does have somewhat of a tactical nature to it, but the sheer variability of these guest judges, it does totally change the feel of the game. Sometimes you have to consider a whole different dimension of the kind of tile placement that you wouldn't even consider before. So again, I really am impressed with the amount of considerations that's come in to these different guest judges. And of course, you can play with the simple mode if you're playing with a more casual audience, or you can go for these really difficult restrictive puzzles that are quite difficult to overcome and will certainly increase the brain burner nature of a game like this. Now, this is a prototype copy of the game, so it is quite difficult to comment on the production, but it does look very impressive when it's all set up. It's a very attractive looking game. And I love the fact that these player boards are dual layered, and the fact that they are, very precisely cut out, so you cannot physically fit the wrong shape in the wrong hole. That's a really nice little touch there. Now, I do have a slight issue with it, and that is when it comes to the colorblind unfriendliness of the game. I am quite severely colorblind, and I have quite a few issues with some of the colors here. Now, weirdly, the actual tiles themselves do have different patterns on them, which really help differentiate them, but those patterns do not match the tiles, which is where the problem is. So, me personally, I have a big difficulty differentiating the reds and the green ones, but for some reason, the reds and the green tiles don't have the same patterns on them. So you can see that these ones have this kind of honeycomb pattern on, whereas these do not. So again, very difficult for me to cross-examine them, but hopefully that will be addressed. It's workable, but it was a bit of a shame and a bit of a missed opportunity. But again, this is a prototype copy, so I can't fully comment on it, but let's just hope that that issue is fixed. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on Diatoms. And I knew very little about this game, if not nothing about this game, when the designer approached me asking me to review this on my channel. And I'm so glad I took her up on that offer, because I really enjoy this puzzly game. And, over the last few years, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a big influx of these styles of games. Thinking games like Sagrada, thinking of games like Calico. There was a lot of them flooding the market, and the best ones kind of stayed around and the rest of them didn't. This one, I think, is right up there with those aforementioned games. And I think if you like those games, then you are almost guaranteed to like this one. Again, the puzzly nature is really strong. That spatial awareness, mapping things out, very satisfying and beautiful looking games, but with some good strategic and some good tactical decisions. So again, it really does walk that fine line and strike that perfect chord for me between being a meaty game in terms of what you can do and the decisions you're making, with the breeziness and almost relaxing nature of it as well. But you're not sacrificing the decisions, you're not sacrificing the interaction for that, which I really do appreciate. And it's I don't play a ton of prototypes because not a lot of them are sent to me, but this one is one that I'm super looking forward to playing some more, and I'm very hesitant and reluctant to give this one back because I'm going to miss it. So yeah, if you like those styles of games, I'm pretty sure, in fact I'm confident that you will like this one, because there is so much to sink your teeth into. Tons of objectives to work towards, and it's just an absolute blast to play. So yeah, I really do recommend this one to those puzzly style of gamers, because I think you're going to have a great time with Diatoms.